Hi guys, welcome back to another video. So today we are going to be doing, I think, one of our technically final reference sheets for some of my OCs. So the previous one that I did is of my OC Sato, which is the one on the screen right now. But if I scroll quite a ways back into my iPad, I do have a few drawings of my OC Koji, which happens to be my youngest OC of my current batch of OCs, I guess. So if you don't know, OC stands for original characters, and from, I guess, like the beginning of last year, I'm assuming, I started making like these little sketch page reference sheets for each of my OCs, and Koji happens to be kind of our last one of my main cast. I know I still have Arakan and Anka, which happens to be Akemi's siblings, but I'm still debating on their designs a little bit, so I'm gonna save them for a later point until I want to kind of like finalize them. But throughout this video, I'm gonna talk as much about Koji as I can, and I'll be sure to show like some of my old drawings of him when I first started including him as like one of my characters more associated with Masaki. So I don't remember which year it was, but when I first made Masaki, I kind of had like a small layout of some kind of story for him after some point, because I think Masaki was kind of like originally designed as like a draw this in your style little chibi character that I came up with, and then he went through a little bit of a color palette change, and then I ended up wanting to draw him kind of like another character that was like not exactly a foil character, but did have like some opposite qualities to Masaki. So this was where kind of like Koji comes in. So Koji is about like 12 to 13. He's about to start middle school is kind of like where his age is. And then personality wise, he's a little bit more rambunctious. He's a little bit naive, but he has like more of like a fiery personality. I feel like him and Sato get along really well. He looks up to Masaki and often like asks him for like advice, or he like often wants to learn from him. So kind of like relationship wise, the kind of like how I have Koji and Masaki meet, and they kind of have like an older brother, younger brother, or like a mentor kind of figure to Koji is kind of like the relationship between them. So for how they meet is that when Masaki moves to, I guess, like the town where he's about to do his studies and stuff, and he works for a flower shop, which a lot of you guys know that Masaki is a florist. He works part-time at a flower shop for an elderly couple, and then the elderly couple is actually the grandparents of Koji. So eventually, as Masaki's like kind of like opening up shop for the day, a random kid kind of like slams open the door, kind of like all flustered, kind of like angry about his baseball game, and he's confronted to Masaki. And that's kind of like how they begin to meet. And then kind of like every so often, Koji will come and visit Masaki at the flower shop, and then they kind of build that rapport there. And then yeah, that's kind of like my very simple story that I had for them at the very beginning. So Koji is, I guess, like my purpose of wanting to draw him, because I think I've talked about this before, kind of like my reasonings for wanting to have original characters was, one, it's always nice to have your own characters to draw so that you're not relying on maybe other people's characters, or like you don't want to keep coming up with new characters. You kind of have something already made that's yours, so it's kind of like easy for yourself to reference to, and hopefully it's a character you like for whatever reason. So for Koji, or I guess like for Masaki, let me talk about this first. I really like drawing like foliage and plants ever since like my uni days. I did a lot of like oriental-ish looking drawings of plants for a lot of my senior year, and then I did a lot of like flower studies afterwards. So, and when I mean flower studies, I didn't study like floriculture or botany or anything like that. I was just interested in like the more like botanical drawings and stuff. So I would do that in like my spare time, just, you know, drawing flowers, getting to learn about them and all that jazz. So I wanted a character that kind of like forces me to draw them a lot more. So that's where Masaki came in. I wanted a florist character so that I could, you know, make a character that requires me to draw more foliage and plants. So before I get on to kind of like talking a little bit more about like Koji's purpose of like why I made him the character that he is, for these sketch pages, I do like making 2 reference sheets right off the bat so that I could have a very specific layout to have kind of like their main, almost like their profile picture kind of thing, a full rendered little like full body chibi on one side, and then we have some extra drawings and doodles to kind of fill up the page. And then on the second page, which is the one I'm working on right now, I wanted to have his full body with his outfit so that you can kind of see like what his outfit looks very generically. And then the rest of the page will be filled up with kind of like miscellaneous drawings and stuff that I feel like would help add either to the character or just to the page that give more visual interest. It kind of like comprises like one larger drawing and then like a few doodles around it. So that's kind of like the format. So back to talking about Koji, I wanted to have a character. One, I don't draw like a lot of younger characters. Eventually, when I would like to make Masaki's kind of like story or comic in the future, I will be trying my best to draw like more other age ranges, like maybe Masaki's parents, Koji's grandparents, and kind of get a bigger set of characters that kind of like cover more of the age ranges. But for now, most of them are within like, I guess like Koji and Anko would be the youngest, around like 12 to 13, and then my oldest right now would be Arakan, who's about 27, 28. But for, I guess like Koji, I also wanted a character that was a little bit more of a upbeat, very energetic, but also very active. So I made sure that I wanted to pick sports for him that made sense. So at the time when I ended up drawing him, and hopefully I'll remember to put some doodles on the screen at some point about like when I was first designing him and did like other sketches and doodles, he plays baseball, and I was planning to make him also play or like participate in judo. I haven't really drawn him very much with his judo like outfit, uniform, whatever you want to call it. So for now, I'm gonna stick more like canonically with his story is that he's going to be for sure playing baseball. So that's kind of like the sport of choice for him. And I wanted to kind of like, you know, do more poses, maybe do more dynamic poses, just because Masaki's a little bit more of like a little bit of a meek person compared to someone who's a little bit more rambunctious. So sometimes like certain action poses I feel like don't really fit Masaki as much, or like kind of more like dramatic poses and all that stuff. So I wanted Koji to be a character that I could kind of fiddle around with and figure out how I wanted to do more like action poses or like more dynamic poses. I haven't done it much lately just because I also don't draw Koji as much. I feel like there's definitely a select few of my OCs if I had to split them down in the middle, since I kind of like a main cast of 6. So Masaki, Kaisen, and Moriko have been the OCs that I've been drawing more recently, and then Sato, Akemi, and Koji have been low-key on the back burner, which I feel bad because Kaisen and Moriko are on kind of like the newer side, and Koji was kind of like there since the beginning. So eventually I will be drawing them a lot more. I do want to sketch them in my sketchbook to kind of build up the habit of drawing them. So I should have talked about this a little bit at the very beginning when I was sketching out Koji. And I do this a lot with all of my OCs, is that when I simplify their designs or I get more used of their kind of like designs and stuff so that I can draw them more frequently, easily, I like to kind of like give them a pattern to their hair, so it makes it very easy for me to continue to draw them a little bit more accurately every time I end up drawing them, if that makes sense. So Masaki has like a very specific pattern to his hair. I usually do like 2 little locks of hair on the left side of his face if he's like facing us, and then on the right hand side we have like the 2 little pieces that hang kind of like almost between his eyes, and then there's like a few blocks or like, you know, chunks of hair that I do in a very specific pattern. So for Koji's bangs, I do alternate the way that they kind of swish back and forth. So because of that, I kind of go like to the right, to the right twice, and then left, right, I think. I think it ends on the left, so that I can kind of like more consistently draw them, and I don't really have to think about like, oh, I need to refer back to a reference over and over again. But if you ever see me do like other illustrations for them where it requires me to do maybe more rendering or detail, then I kind of like break those rules a little bit for their patterns of their hair, because I might add more detail, so I don't want to chunk them as like largely or like as simple. But definitely when I'm like doodling or I'm trying to shorthand them, trying to find a pattern just makes it more natural to me also when I'm like doodling them really quickly. Kaisen has like the same pattern. Moriko kind of has a pattern going for her. I think Sato and Akemi I struggle with a little bit more, just because I keep changing their hair every time when I doodle them, slightly different, and because of that I don't really build like a good doodling method for them, I guess. I don't think you need to, but it's just like something that made it easier for myself whenever I drew Masaki and Koji at the very beginning, I guess. So also in the beginning, I think I kind of had it where Masaki was like kind of represented with a 4-leaf clover, and it kind of makes a little bit more sense in his story. Oh, by the way, so for Koji's reference sheet, I tried my best for like the majority of my OCs. They kind of have like one specific outfit for their entire reference sheet or look, because that's like what they are initially designed with. Koji went through a weird phase where I preferred drawing him actually in his what I consider like a winter or fall attired outfit, which happens to be more like a navy blue, or not navy blue, like an ultramarine-ish color for his hoodie, and then he kind of has like a blocked sleeve cardigan over top, and I liked drawing this a lot more than his typical like vest that's kind of like puffy and chunky, and then he has like a gray long sleeve shirt with like a red collar around his neck. So I kind of ended up wanting to include it in his reference sheet because I do like that look a little bit more, but I still wanted to keep like his original look as his like main design. So like while I was working, I did try my best to include, I think, both a version of like his normal original outfit with the vest, and then when we moved on to the second sheet, I also still included at least one drawing where he has like more of the fall attire, because I'm probably gonna flip-flop between them whenever I do end up drawing Koji a little bit more. So process-wise, I ended up putting a white grid behind my sketch and behind the rough colors, and then I will end up merging my rough sketch and my colors together and make sure that I don't merge my grid or my background color, so that we can basically render and clean up our edges for our rendering process for Koji, so that we can kind of make things look a little bit more clean and a little bit more defined. So while I'm doing that for the first page, I didn't end up including too much footage, I think, when I worked on the second page. I think for like some other videos that I did for the reference sheets, I mainly focused on the first sheet, and then the second sheet was kind of like extra at the very end. But I think I kind of flip-flop between the two a little bit here, and you mostly get to see like the drawing process mostly for the first sheet anyways. So before I get too derailed, I think I was talking about how I associate Masaki with like the 4-leaf clover, so it also kind of like ties in with my branding and stuff, and it kind of has like low-key ties to like, I guess, Wonu, because that's where it kind of like stemmed from. But for Koji, I ended up associating him with like the 3-leaf clover. I just think it's kind of cute. So I think on the second sheet, you'll see that I will include a little bit more of like a clover little design on the back side of his vest. So I forgot that he even had this on the back of his vest. I thought I only really included like a little clover design on his baseball outfit. So on his like jersey of his baseball outfit, I guess. I'm not too sure if it is called a jersey for baseball, but I had their like tentative team name. I guess like for him, I was planning on maybe either it's like a community baseball team for like kids his age, or if it's going to be part of a school. I'm not too sure yet, but tentatively the design I wanted to include like the 3-leaf clover, so they're called the cosmic clovers for now, and I think I can find the design where I had his like little baseball outfit, and I think it looked really cute. I do feel like I might go back in and add a little bit more of like little doodles for Koji's page. I didn't realize this until I started editing this video, that I did not really fill up his page as much when I guess like compared to when I did the other reference sheets or whenever I do sketch pages. So usually the format of these is that I do kind of like one main drawing and then I kind of branch out and try to fill in gaps and try to fill in the space as much as I can. But for the reference sheets, I don't want to fill up and kind of like overlap too much because I still want things to be visible to some extent. But Koji has some like awkward spaces kind of like in and around the canvas, especially on the second page. So I might go back in and squeeze maybe like a chibi or two and try to fill up the spaces again. But for the most part, I think all of my reference sheets that I did for my OCs currently, I do want to do at least one more page for all like the entire cast, I guess, because that's kind of like the point of these little sketch page reference sheets that I wanted to do instead of doing like the traditional kind of like front, back, side view, close up, color palette type of reference sheets. I know probably to like maybe if you want to another artist to commission them, something like that would be much more straightforward to them. But for me, I kind of wanted to play with the idea of like not making things too rigid, and I don't know how to explain it. There's something about making like the standard reference sheet that I just didn't really enjoy, and every time I've done them I always end up scrapping them. So at least for these, I plan to just like have the main page, which will have like their name and usually like the character with their face pretty much like front facing, and at least a little chibi version of their full outfit. And then the second page will have like an actual full version with their full outfit, and then hopefully a little bit of details. But then if I want to, I can always like, you know, do other pages and add them to our little stack for each of my OCs and kind of use it as like supplementary material. Or if I want to replace the second sheet with a different one, if I ever send it to like another artist, then I can kind of like pick and choose which I think would work better, depending on like what kind of commission I wanted and stuff. So I hope these work out. If not, they're just fun to do, and it's just kind of fun to have these little spreads, I guess, of my OCs. So I often get questions about how I do the outline function for text. So once I finished putting Koji's name, I duplicated the layer, and then I went up into our effects and went to Gaussian blur to kind of make the edges fuzzy. Then we can go to the selection tool, select automatic, select outside of your text, change the threshold until you get like a selection that's like larger than your like the actual text. Invert the selection, fill it in with a color, and then we can alpha lock it and change it. So that's kind of like how I usually do the text for any of the sketch pages. So the first page is pretty much done. I went ahead and put a white outline around all the character, or all of the drawings of Koji. I guess it's the same character. But on the second sheet, to kind of keep all of my colors pretty consistent, I ended up copying and pasting Koji's like, I guess like a drawing or two from the first page onto the second page so that we can color pick. And the reason being is that I noticed from color picking from the reference tool that you can open in Procreate is that the colors become a little bit more like dull. So the color accuracy for some reason is just a little bit off. So I don't really want to be selecting too many colors from the reference tool. So it's a little bit easier and more accurate if I just put a version of our finished drawings onto the canvas and just color select from there for now. And then once we have pretty much all the colors kind of set in stone on the second page, I can go ahead and delete that first copied image, and then we don't really have to clutter up our canvas too much. So I think like visually, I do like this kind of like little sketch a little bit more than the rest, just because the lines became a little bit more chunky. And I don't know why more recently I've been really liking that look for my sketches, where the outlines are a little bit more bold and thicker, and like the shading is much more on the simple side. I don't know if it's because it stands out a little bit more and it's not really like super messy, nor is it really super clean either. It just, for some reason, it just really appeals to me. But I'm trying to think what else do I want to talk about for Koji though. I guess I was debating whether or not Anka would be attending the same school as Koji. For me, I feel like it makes a lot of sense that they would, just to kind of like to make them meet, I guess. Otherwise, like, I guess they could meet via Akemi instead. But I feel like they are within the same age range, so they could be friends or just classmates so that they have a little bit more of interactions with one another. I'm still gonna kind of like debate whether or not they'll be friends or they're gonna be acquaintances first, and kind of like figure out how they will meet if they do end up meeting, I guess. I guess another thing about these little sketch pages or like these reference sheets for my OCs, another reason, like, I guess I wanted to keep these as kind of like sketch page format. And whenever I say sketch page, they're not really, I guess like not all my sketch pages only have sketches. Sometimes I do render the heck out of them and they're more like finished drawings all compiled onto one canvas. But more recently, I feel like I've been leaning in towards not rendering them as much. So definitely for Sato and Koji's reference sheets, I definitely think they came out a little bit more rough compared to some of the previous ones. If you're just comparing kind of like what I would consider the main drawing of the canvas, which happens to be probably the biggest one on the canvas that's kind of like in your face. So I don't know, I might still adjust Koji's page a little bit more. Something about like the first page, I do want to fix up his eyes a little bit. I don't know if it's because I drew one of the pupils a little bit off. It just kind of irks me a little bit. So I'll definitely go back and like adjust a few things and then obviously add in the little doodles that I wanted to, like I mentioned earlier. But I think we are finishing up though with our second page. So I kind of wish I did add in more with his like baseball outfit or like uniform alongside with kind of a little bit of like a side or a back view of his like the vest outfit, I guess, because you can't really see the clover design on the back. I don't know if you can tell that I'm sleep deprived right now, so I do apologize if I'm like stuttering or like slurring my words a little bit more than usual. It's almost 4 a.m, so not a great time to do the voiceover, but it's okay. This week has been a little bit hectic for me, but here's kind of our finished little sketch page reference sheets for my OC Koji, and hopefully you'll see him a lot more in the future. I definitely want to draw him with Masaki and Kaisen a little bit more, so yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed today's session, and I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!